don't settle, Benjamin. Shout. We were only 7. Together every night. But we are not 7 with you.
Hey guys, welcome back to the second episode of our Break the Silence commentary here on Armyverse. We are going over the Break the Silence series and giving you our thoughts for each episode. We had one last week that you guys seemed to really enjoy, so we decided that we were going to continue with this series and do episode 2. So we're back with that. And if you're new to the channel, then we are basically an army run channel for armies to come and chat about BTS and loads of different things. We have fun things, we have rants, we have quizzes, we have lots of things over on the channel. So yeah, I hope that you guys really enjoy it. And so today we will be discussing episode 2, You Can Call Me Idol. My name's Billy and we have 2 other hosts with us today. Please can you introduce yourselves, starting with Yami?
Hi guys, I'm Yami. I'm one of the co-hosts on Army Time and I'm so excited for episode 2 today.
And Omer?
Hi everyone, I'm Omer. I'm the host of the Everything Goes podcast here on the Armyverse channel every Wednesday. And I'm so excited to talk about the episode today.
Woo! Alrighty, so getting into the episode, the first thing that we wanted to do was just to give an overview of the episode before we dive into the commentary. First, I wanted to read what would you call it? A synopsis, a description that they wrote on Weverse?
Yeah, like a description or an overview.
Yeah, so under the episode on Weverse it says, "What is life like as idols for BTS? It is a challenge for the members, always having to bring something new. Also, it is with regret when they come short of the quality and standard they wish to deliver on stage for the fans. As BTS puts their challenges and regrets aside to prepare for their next performances, how will the members cope with endless worries and expectations?"
Ominous.
Yeah, by the way, I just wanted to say I didn't know that these descriptions were here until we started rewatching everything for this commentary. I would just see that the episode was uploaded, and the minute I had a free time, I was like, need to play, quick play, faster.
I didn't know until you said it before we recorded this episode.
Oh, really? Yeah, I saw it when we went back over them, but I'm exactly the same. I'll be like, oh my god, new episode, and that's it. I'm clicking on it.
And can I just say, this episode came on the first day together with the first episode.
That's right.
And I didn't know. I saw it only the next day when people were commenting about the stuff that happens in the episode. I was like, I didn't see that.
Oh, I mentioned this on Army Time, but when I saw it for the first time, I thought that they might have uploaded it by accident, and I was like, oh my god, they're going to delete it. Watch it now. But it was actually scheduled to be up that time, so yeah.
Yeah, I know, I was the same way. But yeah, so that was actually really nice of them. I was like, is this an extra gift for us? Yeah. But actually, if you think about it, so there's 7 total episodes for this series, and they were releasing them Tuesday and Thursday. I think in order to end on a Thursday, they were like, we'll just do 2 up front. And especially considering the much heavier nature of the topics they cover in the later episodes, they were like, let's not overload them by throwing them to the last 2 in one day, because that would just be a 1-2 punch in your face.
Yeah, I found it hard enough to recover from episode 6 and then episode 7, so can you imagine having to watch them both at once?
Yeah, it's you cry, you laugh, you cry again, you cry harder, you laugh hysterically, and then you're like, what did you do to me?
Yeah, so, basically your life as an army.
And then all that, and then have the Festa schedule come out
the next day.
Yeah.
So instead, we get this episode on the very first day. So without further ado, shall we get into our discussions?
Yeah. I want, even before we start, the name of the episode is You Can Call Me Idol. And yeah, I chose their idol life and all that, going directly from the airport to the stadium and their commitment to their, to trying to be better idols and stuff like that. But I found it, instead of being about them as idols, it's more about them as artists. And you see they're trying to improve how they are as performers, how they are as songwriters, how they are as singers. I found it despite it being about idol, I found it to be more about artist.
Well, I guess that's where you can question this title, can't you? Because it's not just idol, or like it's not a sentence reflecting idol. It's saying you can call me idol. And
Yes.
that can have multiple meanings because obviously in the song itself that it comes from, it's very much with the implication of you can call me idol in that demeaning way that you do. It doesn't matter. I don't care. So if you want to act like I'm not an artist and I'm an idol with that negative connotation, then you can call me that. Hey, here's an entire episode showing how artistically skilled and talented we are. Fuck you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly my thoughts. Yeah. So I found it really interesting that they went with you can call me idol when we all know that immediately the next line in the song is you can call me artist. And
Whatever
the
you
whole
call
show-
me, I don't care.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and the whole episode like showed just how artistic they are and how much they put into everything they do, whether it's performing, whether it's interacting with fans and the songs and all of that. It's just
Yeah. Well,
I
as an
found it
as an overview of the episode, I found it to just be very, this is a look into the life of hardworking artists. Like most of the things, yeah, it was great. It was not really so much about their personalities, even though you can see it. The main focus of this is like, this is our profession and this is how we are in our job and what makes us so good at it.
yeah, and how serious they are about it. They don't take anything lightly. They don't take anything for granted. Like they put everything they can as hard as they can, and they always try to improve themselves, always push farther. I found this episode really,
You know, I will
as
say,
if,
sorry.
I guess,
What did you say?
that I found it to be a gift, like that we
Yeah.
get to see.
Yes.
these
Yes,
we
yes, yes.
usually don't get to see. We see them as performers. We see them like do all those amazing things and put out these amazing songs, and we know how much effort goes into, but we don't really get to be that fly on the wall to see the hard work that goes beyond
I have
this.
a specific commentary for that when we get to it. I'll say which one when we get there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, in the context of them announcing recently that they were going to be creating a new album, that they were going to let us see the process, even if it's ugly, even if it's weird, and they were trying to figure out how much of it they were comfortable revealing. It's really incredible that in that same context and alongside all of the lives they've done on YouTube, letting us see their meetings and their process, we now have this look back in time of what they were doing here as well, simultaneously trying to make music while touring. And it's this very intimate look at the process, and it's those same struggles. And
Yeah.
and I know he says like, oh, it's not pretty, blah blah blah. I'm sorry, I think it's beautiful.
I think
love
it's
seeing it.
incredible.
I feel really privileged to see it. It's
Yes.
I just love seeing that. Seeing
And
that.
honestly, like, I don't know about you, but this is part of what I will go on to talk about. But hearing Promise is one thing, you love it. But seeing how it changes and then having that transition from the like recorded version and them singing into the actual like ready-made, fully packaged version made the song 10 times more beautiful to me.
More meaningful.
Yes.
Just there was so much more you could take away from it, because now you understood that this was a piece of his soul. This was him. This was his identity that he put into the music, and he agonized over the lyrics, over the message that he was trying to say. This came from his heart.
You know, the main thing I took away from it was like when we hear a song that comes out to us, we think, wow, that's amazing. Like, that's perfect. It sounds phenomenal. And that's great. But seeing the humanity within it rather than the fully perfect package, it just adds that extra depth. And it talks about BTS as well, like why they're so different from a lot of other groups, because a lot of the time you only see the fully packaged version, and that's great, that's nice. But the point of BTS and why we love them so much is because it's not just like that in life, and it's not just like that with them. And so getting to see that with the music was exactly the same feeling that I get when I look at BTS and for their humanity.
Okay, let's get into the episode. So let me set the stage. So the episode opens in Taipei, so in Taiwan. And as we've mentioned in the last episode, the way they put together this these concerts is that in episode 1, they just showed you all the Japan locations. And episode 2 is them beginning to show the other locations that they had concerts at in Asia. But sequentially, before Taiwan, they had their concerts in Tokyo and Osaka. So they'd had 5 days of concerts up until this point. And then just like straight away, they were going into Taiwan And this is them arriving at the concerts in the beginning of December at the Taiwan International Baseball Stadium. So it's a massive venue.
I also wanted to just say, like, I said this before in the last episode, this first opening sequence again was incredible. The way that it opened on a little toy airplane, and then it showed you all the city locations zoomed into Taipei, and then it had them like making their way to the venue with all the like the flashes and all this thing, and then going
And it was in
about.
black and white.
And it was in black and white.
I love that black and white.
Yeah, and this is kind of skipping to the ending a bit, but I think it's relevant here. And the way we close out the episode is them then leaving and it being a real aeroplane in the sky. And it very much was symbolic of like, this is how it is here at the beginning of the episode. We've got this little toy airplane and this is the journey that we're planning. And then at the end, it was like, okay, and now we've fulfilled this, we're leaving, and here's the real aeroplane. And it's just so beautiful that they've done it like that. Props, honestly, to the like creativity of the editing team. And
I love the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Tay like getting off a plane and wanting to drink something immediately is such a mood. Like I think anyone who's ever been on a plane knows this. That the airplanes are so drying that you just need that liquid in you, and not knowing like what time it is, how long they've been flying, like all that lack of focus, and immediately going from the airport to the stadium. Like those 5 minutes are quite essential idol life. Like they're going out, they're seeing all the cameras.
Yeah, because
That felt like-
essentially what happened was like they got off their plane and then they went to their like, I don't know, staging area that's like an hour away from the actual stadium. And then they got whatever they needed to get ready, and then they drove to the stadium and started their rehearsal.
in the rain.
In the rain at night.
And you know what though? Did you see how like smiley and happy they were while they were doing it?
Yeah.
Like the fact that they have those kind of attitudes. And I guess that comes with what they were saying last week of how it becomes normality, and so it's not as difficult anymore because that's just what they're used to.
Yeah.
Making the best of that normality and just learning to have fun in it.
Yeah. I also liked how Taeyong was like singing opera on the stage, and then like they were all telling him that like, oh, you don't have to, like, you shouldn't have used your acting skills on a drama, you should have gone into musicals, you're like much better suited for that.
Which he should.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah.
So that June always joins him when he does the opera.
I just think that Namjoon just loves to sing because he sings whenever, wherever, and he does it in a silly voice as well most of the time, because I think he just finds a lot of joy just from singing, and I love that about him.
Yeah. I wanted to backtrack a little bit because so they start off with an interview from Yoongi, and he has this very interesting thing where he talks about, I'll quote him, "If you think about it, an idol group is a rare social construct. Complete strangers live together and have to get along well. Also, they perform and make music for thousands of people. You can't find something like that anywhere else in the world. Whether we like it or not, we have to move forward together. We always have to think about how we're going to do that, and it's not easy. That's why many new artists want to become like us. We respect each other, yet our focus is on the team, and that's how we were able to win out. We all know what's good for the team is good for each member."
Yeah, I think this was a very important quote, honestly. And there's a lot of things to unpick here. So I'm just going to focus, first of all, on this sentence about an idol group being a rare social construct.
Yes.
And honestly, this was very interesting to me, because when you do think about it, and it's the same with a lot of things in life, when you really take a second to look at it from an objective position and look into it for what it is without your like preconceived notions of it because you experience it. When you look at an idol group, it really is like an experiment of people. And it reminds me a lot of studies that I've looked into in the past of sociology experiments where they're like, okay, we're going to try this to see how human behavior is. We're going to put this group of people in this scenario and then figure out how it is and monitor it and see what happens. And that is kind of like what an idol group is. It's taking different people with different personality types from different backgrounds with different skills, putting them all together and seeing what happens. And they go on later to talk in the episode about how they probably could never have found a better group of people, and it's like they were destined to meet. And so it really is interesting when you think about that, because an idol group is definitely a rare social construct that you probably can't find anywhere else. And BTS are like the winner of that not winner, the I'm trying to think of the right word, but in terms of actual scientific terminology, they would be the like successful version of the experiment, in a sense.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say is like I think this is why people from like especially in the West like to see idol groups through this like lens of peculiarity. Like everyone's like, oh, like that's really weird, you have this group of people coming together and they all perform and like they're supposed to live together. Like I feel like that's part of why people say like, oh, idols are this like construct, and like to criticize it in the West. When like the thing that I think is why idol groups are even successful in any way, shape, or form is because it's a group of people who come together with a mindset of like, we are a group, so we have to have a group dynamic and we have to sacrifice personal things for the group. I don't know. I feel like that's a mindset that is not as prevalent in the West, unless you're talking about like a sports team. Like in the context of music, that's not really talked about.
And that's the thing, isn't it, really? It just comes down to difference and your environment. Because for people in Korea or in that environment, they wouldn't even think about a group being a social construct because it's their reality. For people in the West, they wouldn't think about a football team being a social construct because that's their reality. But when you look at like opposing ways of seeing it, most of the time people will just be like, oh, well, that's weird. That's not normal. That's different to me. Whereas if we learn to actually look at our own environments like Jungi is, for Jungi, he's sitting there and he's saying, well, if you think about it from an objective position, it is kind of like this. And you do that for yourself and for others, then it becomes much easier to not be so judgmental.
I actually had, like, when I listened to this and right from the first time, but then rewatching the episode again, I thought about there is a kind of similar situation about people that are stuck together and are just taken from random places and put together, and they have to spend 24 hours with each other and have this common goal to achieve, and that's the army. Like when people are recruited to the army, they are taken from all kinds of places, they have different skill sets, and they're just shoved together for 24 hours a day at all times in order to achieve something. And that's where I went with it. Like he said it, but he said it like, sure, it's not music and it's not dancing or creating, but it's still creating this sort of community and bond and connection that people have with each other when they go through obstacles in the army. It really reminded me of that.
And honestly, when you think about it in terms of the army, the thing that keeps people so disciplined in the army is because everybody has the same goal and everybody isn't thinking about themselves, they're thinking about the team. And that's basically what Jungi is saying as well, is that the reason why they do so well is that and the other important thing that he said was, we respect each other.
Yes.
But we know that what's best for the team is best for everyone. So there's two sides of this. If you know that if you try to like please the team but you don't respect each other, then that builds resentment. If you respect each other but you don't try to win for the team, then you're never going to be able to make the sacrifices that you need to make in order to succeed. And so BTS have found a very common ground of being able to do both of these things, and I think that's what Yoongi meant by that's why a lot of groups want to be like us, because that's a very hard place to come to.
It's a very hard mentality to stick to just understand that even if you have personal desires that conflict, you have to always be considerate of the fact that there's 6 other people trying to grow and succeed and move forward the way you are.
Yes, exactly. And you have to take out all notion of selfishness, but also all notion of like prioritizing others, because I'm sure it's very difficult for them if one of the members wants to do something, like they'd want to encourage them, but if it wasn't good for the team, they'd have to be like, look, I want to encourage you, but I can't. And that's just the way that it has to be. But the thing that was interesting about this is that the whole time this voice interview was used was playing over those really intimate and funny moments of them laughing together, hugging, and that again really reflected what he was saying, I think.
I agree. It's not coincidence the way this is edited, and it really gives substance to what he says, like to show that respect and camaraderie that they have with one another, and how much they enjoy each other's company and able to and how strong that friendship is.
But at the end of the day, like if you feel that way about each other, then you really wouldn't get offended, because a lot of the time, if you're around a group of people, if they're like, look, you can't have that because we have to think about the team, you're going to be upset, you're going to feel hurt, you're going to think that they don't care about you enough. But if you have a close enough friendship or bond with each other that you know that the only reason they're doing that is because they have the same goal and they're looking out for you as a person by looking out for the team, it's just very mature, and it takes a lot of growth and understanding and a very healthy mindset to think that way.
You know, I want to skip to the very end of the episode and bring up Jungkook, because this seems like it's tied in together.
Yes.
So fast forwarding to the very, very end of the episode, the last thing that happens is like they finish their concert. We've watched throughout it that Jungkook has been struggling backstage. He's like heat exhaustion. He's tired. And so at the very end of it, there's like he's sitting on the couch with Jimin and Hobie, and Hobie's telling him that like, hey, even if you want to go hard, you have to be able to control that and make sure you don't overdo that, because that's part of being professional. What would happen if he couldn't hide that he was so tired and he had to go on stage all weak and shaky? That would look worse for them for their concert than him individually going harder, you know, because he felt like he needed to.
So the first thing that we have from him is him talking about how he feels like he's been improving very slowly over the years, but he wants to try harder. And he's upset after the concert, and Jimin is comforting him. And he's saying he wants to show rapid improvement to people. And then he says, you know, no matter how hard I try, some things are just too hard for me. And then we move into Hobie, and he's very gentle, but also stern at the same time. And he's very much saying, you could burn out and you could affect all of us.
Yes.
And the way you're thinking, even though I understand you, and I know that you're hard on yourself, and I know that you want to do better because you think that's going to help the team. But the way that you are acting, whether you mean it to be or not, just isn't for the benefit of everyone. And what you have to remember is that pacing yourself is for the benefit of everyone, even if it's difficult. And I think that's very interesting. But I also think what's interesting after that is they all kind of know how to soften the blow.
Because you can also see it on his face. They like,
yes.
As Hobie is telling him these things, Jungkook has just these big eyes and he looks so vulnerable. And like, even if the criticism and the feedback was given gently, with understanding, with empathy, it still is something that hurts Jungkook a lot, because he's very hard on himself and is a perfectionist, and we know that as ARMY, and his other members know that way more than we do.
And you know, I think when it comes to Jungkook, I think he tries so hard to be better for the team that he results in not being quite as good for the team. And then he realizes that he's not being as good for the team, and then he's hard on himself and tries to be good for the team. And it kind of goes round in this circle of, oh, I'm doing everything that I can, but it's having the opposite effect. So I'm going to bash on myself and I'm going to try even harder.
I think it's also important to remember that this happened, like this conversation is taking place not that long after his injury in England, when he injured himself right before the concert, because he always pushes himself, and how much he felt there, and how Hobie handled that situation as well. Again, like he really wanted to go and step and dance, and like maybe like 2 weeks after, he already was planning on like jumping on the stage, and Hobie was like, no, you can't, you have to, you can't do that.
You know, hold on, I just want to say, you bring up a good point, Omer, because in terms of time, they were in England.
Yeah, in London.
They were in London in like mid-October. And so he healed. And so when they are in Taiwan, it's December. So he probably felt a lot of pressure and guilt to make up for what he couldn't do before, and to just make sure that his performance on stage was even better.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing...
when he started the tour, he also when they started it in August in Seoul, he was disappointing himself in his Euphoria performance. Like he's really been pushing himself this entire concert to try and always overcome these minuscule mistakes that he feels he made, and it results in him pushing himself harder than he should, and really pushing it to the limit. And the members see it and they know how to handle it, and they, like you said, they try to cushion the blow and like be very firm in how they tell him to slow down and pace himself, but also not make it too hard, and then joke with him about it. And like Namjoon said, why are you telling him this? Like he's the best, he always does his best and stuff, like they always like. And then Yoongi like does that story about the camel.
Yeah, where he calls himself a camel.
Before we get to that, I think this comes later in the series where they say like JK is always practicing every time he makes sure that he prepares his solo. But what I wanted to say in response to what you said about his injury as well is when you were talking just now, Yami, about his eyes and how vulnerable he looked when they were saying this, I think part of the reason for that is he has been told this before. Yeah. You know, he's been told to conserve himself. We've seen Hobie say in a different thing, I can't remember when it was, the exact same thing.
It was in Burn the Stage when they were in Chile or Argentina.
And I think JK forgets about this and tries so hard to do his best. It's nothing on him trying to do anything wrong. He's just trying so hard to be there for the team. But when he gets that reminder of, hey, I've been told this before and I did the same thing, I feel like he took that so hard, because it's like, I didn't even think about that. And when you realize that you're doing something you didn't mean to do, that you've been told about before, it really would feel so hard. You would feel so guilty, and you would feel like you've let other people down. And yeah, this part of the episode was the hardest part for me, because I completely understand why he was acting the way he was.
He also said, I want rapid improvement, which already is like a sign that, like, when you want something, like you said at one time, like when you learn something new and you want to already like be good at it when you're just starting out, like it's the same thing. Like I want this rapid improvement, and it usually doesn't come. It usually takes time, and you can get so frustrated you push yourself too much.
You know, the other thing that JK said was, and we go into to learn more about this later in the series, but he says, what I've got on stage is all I have. Getting better faster is my goal. And you can really tell that for him, he feels like this is all he has to offer the team. You can tell that he's down on himself a lot. He doesn't think that much of his own talents and his own skills. And he thinks the way I shine is when I'm on stage. So I need to be better, because if I'm not better, then I'm not enough. And that's why he pushes himself so much. And it's honestly, it is very sad, but it's very relatable.
I wrote for this entire segment just one sentence, that I wish Jungkook would be able to see himself how we see him, not as the golden maknae, but as this person who we see all the effort that he puts, and we appreciate everything he does, and we see all his talents. It's not just that he's the best at something, it's just that he's such a hard worker, that I really wish he would be able to see himself the way we see him. Hopefully one day he will, when he has those conversations with Army.
When he comes to Armyverse and he hears us explain how incredible, and you know, it's not even just that he's such a hard worker and he's so talented. He brings so much to the team, and he literally, they've said before, it was a stroke of luck that Jungkook joined our group, and he doesn't understand how key of a role that he actually plays.
Yeah, I know we just moved forward to the very end of the episode, but, you know, the structure of these episodes is usually that the beginning ties to the end. So I just got really excited, and I know you guys did too, of wanting to say, here was the question or the idea posed in the beginning of the episode, and then in the end, this was the example they gave with JK. And now, so maybe we should just go back to the beginning and go through the episode and talk about everything else that they brought up, and then revisit that ending scene and see if it gives us a different context or a different meaning.
Yeah, I agree. And just before we do, just one thing to say is we've spoken about how this episode is about their artistry and like their professionalism, how they are as a team, and I guess why they've made it so far. And so with them answering this question of how each of them working together to benefit the team, like it just comes full circle.
Yeah. So, rewinding in time, back to the beginning of the episode.
So,
you want to go or?
yeah, I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure the next segment of this episode is this whole scenario about worrying whether ARMY would get tired of their performances, because the way they phrase it is some armies come for the first time, some armies come repeatedly, but whether they come for the first time or not in this age of new media, most people will have seen what is coming through videos online. I'm not really like that. I don't like to see things beforehand and get spoiled. And I know you guys are the same. Well, I know you are, Yami. Are you a man?
I am too. Like TV shows and stuff. I would avoid, like, before watching the episode. If I didn't watch it the minute it came out, I would be off Twitter and stuff.
Yeah.
So with TV shows and stuff, I do avoid it. But with the concert, I can't help myself. So when there's footage all over the TL, I would watch.
I think that's the key word. I can't help myself.
Yeah. Well, that kind of shows. That shows two perspectives, I guess. And you, I think, Amara, is probably what the majority of people are like seeing it on the timeline or on social media or wanting to look out for it because it's so exciting and like you don't want to wait. Yeah. So in this age of new media is how, well, from their perspective, they get worried that if you've already seen it, then are you going to be surprised? And, you know, this does spark a big debate because we can sit here and say as much as we like, oh, we're going to love everything and everything's going to be great. But in the moment, you're not going to get as big of a reaction to something you knew was coming over something that just completely turned things around. So I completely understand their dilemma here, and it is a difficult one, and I really appreciated having this conversation.
So the thing I wanted to clarify for people is that not all armies use the same social media platforms. Armies are spread out across every possible place you could be on the internet. And just looking at Twitter, for example, you have fan cams that get shared by people from every concert, both professional fan cams and just like random people. You get pictures taken and shared. You get GIFs that are made. You get compilation videos on Twitter and YouTube that get shared around.
Even live streams of the entire show.
Yes. You have some very dedicated armies who live stream it in 144p.
Yeah. I watch those as well.
Yeah, same. So it's like, this is a very interesting dilemma for them to have as well, because most artists, you know, if they're big headlining artists, like this will kind of happen to them as well. But no other fandom, as far as I know, has such a close relationship with their artist that we enjoy dissecting their stage production, set list, the way they've switched a slight movement between one performance and another. And so we actually enjoy the tiniest things about their performances and like to memorialize them online and share them over and over again. So,
and the other thing with that is like, because they say in the episode their entire performances have such a narrative and have such a reason and a meaning for the order that it goes in, so it's not, there's not as much room to change it as there is with other stars. So even if you would watch every single thing from a different artist, then there would probably still be a few changes between performances. But BTS's specialty is their narrative, is how they take you on a journey from beginning to middle to end. So it's even more difficult to keep things new and not expect the comfortable as they describe it.
So this is actually where I have to say something. So in the episode, Hobie is the one who brings this up. During his interview, he says, and I quote, "Normally pop stars are very free-spirited. They spontaneously decide what they want to do each day. They do what they want. They pick the song or whatever they want to do for the encore." And then he laments that for BTS, because their concerts have a set storyline and narrative, and their lighting and VC are all prearranged, there isn't a lot of things they can do offhand. So I mean, unfortunately, I think that's the reality of any artist in any kind of act on a stage. So my husband used to work in an arena where he was part of the crew that would set up and take down for visiting acts, visiting artists. And he explained to me in detail that things like lighting and sound mixing always have to be predetermined to make sure that they're executed correctly. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of little pieces that all have to be pre-programmed and done correctly. So even for huge headliner artists, they're not going to have many changes, if any at all, in their concerts. They maybe have a song or two that they switch up, and that's it. So in that context, BTS already do more than other big artists by they have those VCRs. Those are one just like incredible things that I've not seen other artists have. But two, the greatest variation, like their achievement to date of like having variety in their concert was that during the Love Yourself tour, they had a title medley that would happen in the middle of the concert. And this title medley, there was actually 3 versions of it. So depending on the day and their mood, they would switch out which title medley they wanted to do. And so each of these title medleys was a bunch of their songs. It was 5 of them that they'd have like this pre-arrangement for. But the lighting and the sound mixing and all of that would have already been preset. So they could just still pick on the day which one they wanted to do. And we actually have, I think it was Memories of 2018 in the like behind the scenes from like wherever they are. You can see them during rehearsal before each concert going, okay, which set list do we want to do today? Do we want to do A, B, or C? And they would just pick and go forward with that based on their mood and whatever the crowd's reaction was to whatever set list they played the night before.
I think there is like 3, from what I can think of off the top of my head, there are 3 different elements to this. So the first element is if the audience has already seen something and expects it, are they going to show the same reaction as they would if they had no idea? The second thing is if that then happens, or if it becomes very routine, are the artists themselves going to get too comfortable? Are they going to not experience it with as much excitement because it's another repetition of what they have already done? And then the third thing is, for people, if they were to change this, then would other people be missing out on the entire incredible narrative that they have put together because for them it's brand new? And these are kind of the questions that they kind of circle back and forth between them, of the dilemma, as they describe it, of, well, how do we go about this? Because on the one hand, we want it to be exciting for us and for those who have seen what is coming, but then on the other hand, it's good to keep it the same because we have such a meticulous story that we're trying to tell, and there are people that might never have seen this before. And they really set this up first, and then the next thing that comes on is sound check scenes. And I think this is probably another way that they can skirt around this issue, because in sound check they usually say beforehand, we've seen this as well, oh, what songs do you want to do for sound check today? And then they'll pick certain sound checks and it's a lot freer. And the way it's edited is them performing DNA very freely, just doing how they want it to do, and then it transitions into DNA on stage with all the sparkly outfits and the choreo, and I thought it was very well done, and it shows you what they were trying to put forward.
But the sound check is only for like 2,000 people, and it's also, you're not allowed to photograph it. You are not allowed to record, so it's very limited people that get that experience.
Well,
so I don't think that's
I just mean in terms of for BTS themselves and for certain fans, like when facing this dilemma, this is one of the ways that they have come up with to kind of try to bring something new.
I actually think like it's mostly like we just saw Bang Bang Con and we saw the Wings tour, which was had a lot more of a strict
rigid
narrative. It was very rigid. It didn't have that same conceptual storyline as this tour had, but it was a lot more rigid performance-wise. And here, I think they really took advantage of the encore, of the title medley, of these small moments where they can break free of choreo and break free from the structure and rigidness of a concert like this that's so well put together and so programmed, to really do all those small moments where
to leave room for creativity and self-expression.
Yeah, exactly, where Tae and Jin like do that funny bit in So What, and
I loved
Namjoon and Jimin doing Anpanman. Like they added all these tiny moments. They pour water on each other. They really made it a lot more lively, I think.
One of my favorite things that BTS have ever done, and I'm trying to remember which song it is now. What's the song where in each performance Taeyoung leads the choreo?
Boys with Fun.
Yeah, I think it's Boys with Fun. So each show Tay will have like a certain move that he gets to make, and each time it will be different. And it's true, like I've seen the compilations of that, of each of those, like one after another, and it really does bring this kind of new fresh feel, because for that audience it's something specifically for them, and for the artists they get to be experimental every time. So it's really understandable why they would feel that way and why they would want these certain rooms to express themselves and to be creative.
Here's my take on it. So what they do and what we do when we go to a concert and see them is we're having a feedback loop of them looking at us, seeing us happy and excited, them getting happy, excited, us getting happy and excited, seeing them, and it's just round and round and round, and that's why it's so exhilarating. And so if what they, like Jin and Hobie both talk about their concerns about how, like, hey, if you do the same thing over and over again, like you start to wonder, like, am I going to still be as into it as I was the first time, or will it become more routine? And then will I lose my excitement, and in turn the audience lose the excitement? And I think that's completely understandable. Also, as artists, like, the whole point of you creating something, like, is that you like creating something new, something that doesn't exist before, and something that's just yours. So as just creative spirits, it makes so much sense that they would be like, I want to do more.
Yeah, I want to add that like when I went to Wembley, it was after the Rose Bowl, the Chicago concert. Yeah, the Speak Yourself. So it was after Rose Bowl, the Chicago concert, MetLife, and Brazil concerts. So I already saw all the fan cams. I watched it in 144 pixels. Like, I knew what I was getting into. And that didn't take away from my excitement or my enjoyment one bit. I also watched it. I went on both days of Wembley, not just the first one. So I saw like the same concert the day after. And I think one of the most amazing things that BTS gave us is not just the music, but it's the fandom. And when you watch it, even if you watch it the day after, you watch it with new people and you get their excitement with it. And it's just so electrifying to be in that stadium, to see it, that it doesn't matter if it's your second time seeing it, your fourth time seeing it. It's just so electrifying, and
you feel welcome. You're with your people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You feel at home, and you're really able to let it all out. And I think that also adds a lot to the concert experience, and makes it new every time, because the people you watch it with are new every time.
Yeah, no, I do totally agree. And I don't think that, like, I think if BTS were to do the exact same show with the exact same speeches, with the exact same set list over and over and over and over and over again, I don't think I would ever find it boring. I don't think that's the problem. I don't think people would ever get bored of it. But when you think about, say, the moment at Wembley when everyone sang, that was so special on a different scale, because it was a one-time thing and people felt a part of that moment. And that's a different kind of special. That doesn't mean it's boring if it doesn't have that, but it also adds something that is, I don't know, an extra thing. So I don't think there's a problem with them not being able to change anything, but I can understand why they would feel that way. And when we move on to talk about to see Jin talking about his glasses and how excited he is to show a different color of sunglasses every day, because each time it would be something new and it would be a different reaction from the crowd, because it's the only time, or it's something they weren't expecting. It definitely would bring something different. So I see both sides, and I can understand the dilemma.
And then the other dilemma of, even if they could change it a lot, how would that, feel for fans who never got to see it the original way? Yeah. So, like, it's just like a three-pronged issue, and all sides are correct, and all sides have value. The thing I also wanted to say is per Tay's words, I'm a definite repeat concert goer. I saw their concerts over and over and over again in very short successions. And the thing that, from my experience gave me, is that I felt a sense of comfort in the performance. I loved being among ARMY, like Omer said, and I loved seeing the tiny little differences that they had put in between performances. So it's just like, I feel like when they were talking about in this episode, I think it was Hobie who was like, all we can do is like change the little things and hope that's enough, like accessories or outfits. From my perspective, I'm like, you have fans that are so devoted, who adore you so much. We notice the little things. We make every little thing a big deal. So, like,
Yes.
something I actually forgot to mention last episode is that throughout their concerts, they started in Seoul, then went to the US, and then went to Europe for Love Yourself. They had the same outfits throughout all of those performances. And then when they went to Asia, they changed their outfits and had completely new appearances. And that just was incredible. There was like an online sensation in the fandom because we all couldn't stop looking at them and we're like, oh my God, like I wish they felt more comfortable to change outfits more often. We love seeing them in even more clothes.
But I guess that also brings about the thing that makes it even more special when there is a change. Like when they do change their outfits, if they were changing their outfits every single show, then that would become routine. The fact it's so special is because it doesn't happen as often.
Yeah, that is true.
Then that's another added layer, isn't it? I think you have to find a fine line. And like Yoongi said, that they wanted new opportunities to change things on the next tour. And they've been talking between themselves and with the company on how to implement these types of things.
I'm so interested in that.
Yeah, so am I.
How they're going to go about it.
Yeah, same. And I think that they really will find a way of finding a happy medium. And this is how you grow, isn't it? So we go from the beginning of their tours where it's quite rigid, they have the same things and there's not much room for growth, to implementing different style changes and different medleys and things like that. And now moving forward again to just keep growing and to keep finding new ways of doing it. And without that, I guess it wouldn't really be fun anymore. If you find the perfect solution to everything, then what comes next, you know?
Yeah.
I also think like they really find a way to personalize each concert, whether it's with Jin screaming out the name of the city in the encore, or the endments, which always change, they never repeated. And they always find a way to relate to it, whether it's Brazil, that's exactly 12 hours away from Korea, or the moon in France, or the Berlin Wall that has a part of it in Korea. Like they always find a way to really personalize those endments to make that concert feel, to touch the people at that concert, and to make those concert goers feel like they're seen. They're not just a crowd of people, but the actual people from that city, from that country.
Yes.
They feel seen.
Yeah. And the other thing is like ARMY tried to help with that as well, with the slogans, like all those fan run projects that end up bringing up these beautifully drawn slogans with like those really heartfelt and touching comments, and like revealing that to BTS at every concert is a very emotional moment. And then afterwards, when they take their picture, their today's Bangtan Twitter photo of them with those slogans, and sometimes even reacting and saying like, oh, this is really touching. That is just like by itself. It's like, I feel like they keep imagining that they have to have these big grandiose things to impress us. And the thing is when you care about someone, the little things are what matter.
Well, this is quite funny that we bring this up, because this is something that I feel like BTS have understood about us. The way that they view us is that it's the little things about us that matter. You can see that in their lyrics for Boy With Love. But then when they think about themselves, they think in the opposite way. They don't see it, but they don't see that we feel exactly the same way towards them, that they don't have to do anything big or special because we love them for the little things. And this what makes me want to shake them and be like, hey, you can't just think one way for you and not the other way for us, because we're the same way.
Yeah,
exactly. Like ARMY really does try to add all those little moments, like whether it's a Brazilian ARMY that did the heart project for Jin, or like how I Purple You was created was first by ARMY coming with purple papers over their army bombs, and then there was a sea of purple, and then Tae, with his genius mind, came up with the Bora. We'll talk about it more in depth in the Everything Goes podcast, ARMY history next week. So stay tuned.
But with so one thing that Tae says in this bit is one of the, actually I don't know if it's Tae, I haven't got it written down, I thought it was, but so one of them says the best part is thinking that there are first timers, people that haven't seen it before.
It's
and
Namjoon.
What I would say, it's Namjoon. So what I would say to him is, we're all first timers because every concert is a new concert. So
yes,
that entire crowd is first timers every time. And that's what I wish I could say.
The other thing is, you are completely right there, because every concert is a different combination of armies. It's a different mood. BTS themselves like to talk about how, depending on where they visit, the crowd has a different vibe, and they enjoy themselves and getting to know that crowd in a different way. Whether it's like Brazilian armies who don't just do the fan chant, who scream nonstop every single lyric, and like they find that highly entertaining, or it's the armies,
Japanese armies who are a lot more quiet and
but who then sing a fan song. They sang the first
For You.
For You, which was the first Japanese original song that they released while they were waiting for them before the encore. Or whether it's armies in, was it Berlin and Paris, where they stomped the floor, the way that they would do at like a soccer game, like a football game. So it's like all of these things are a unique touch of the culture and or of the mindset of the people in that part of the world, and that's why each concert is a unique experience, because like Omer said, like you guys said, it's a group experience. It's a beautiful moment in time that can never be recreated.
And you know, if you think about it in terms of a metaphor, to try and think, like, next to me I have a cup of coffee, for example. So I drink a cup of coffee every single day, but every coffee that I have, whilst being exactly the same, is different because it depends on where I'm sitting, what I'm doing, how I'm feeling. Each time I drink a coffee might as well be the first time, because it's never going to be repeated exactly the same way and in another moment. And that's the way I feel like concerts are, and people who go to these things are. Each moment is a first time.
And that's why it's so precious. And our chances to see BTS with our naked eyes are so precious and so rare. That's why we all treasure them, and why there's so much emotion wrapped up in it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure that every single army would go to every BTS concert if they could.
Yes.
If they could go to every single one, they would. I would.
Yeah.
I would, definitely.
So
I think also, like, if we're talking about the way this whole episode is edited, to think about how we perceive these concerts and how each one is special for us and each one is different, and how, like, the pictures we take from them hold memories for us. And like, I will delete so many photos from my phone, but I won't delete those photos from from that concert and the videos I took, because each one of them reminds me of that experience, of the people I've met and the places I've seen thanks to BTS, and that atmosphere in that stadium. And to go from thinking about that concert to hearing Tae talk about creating scenery right after that.
Yeah, that's a good segue.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say, though, before we segue into the next part of the episode, I just wanted to say that based on all the comments they've made about what they wish they could change and what they lament about their current concert setup, I think going forward, like, their plan is to live stream officially more of their concerts. We saw them do it a bunch this past year. Like, they live streamed the Riyadh concert, they live streamed one of the musters, Wembley, they live streamed the Seoul final. So I think going forward, they would just want to offer people the opportunity to tune in live as often, or at least a lot more often, and then allow themselves to change the concert more often then, because
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
That's a really good point, actually, because then that takes out the problem of what if people don't get to see this, because if you want to see it, you can, and then that issue immediately disappears. The next issue would be their narrative or the story that they're trying to portray, but they can portray more than one. There is always stories to be told.
And there's more than one way to tell the same story.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so I think most of the rest of the episode now is Jimin and Tae working on their songs, right? So we have Jimin up first, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it starts with Jimin talking about the creation of Promise.
It's pretty much like the rest of the episode, right? Where they spend the night in the hotel. And it's like a split scene between, first it's like Jimin by himself in his hotel room versus Taeyong and Hobie in the car coming back from the stadium. And then it's Taeyong by himself in his room working on his song, while Jimin is in his hotel room with Namjoon working on the lyrics to his song.
Once again, I just wanted to say how much I love that they spend their car journeys. Like the immediate thing was like, okay, come on then, show me your song. So it kind of tells to me that this is like a tradition almost to when they're in the car to show each other their music, which I just think is adorable.
I thought of you when I saw that. I was like, Billy's gonna like
me
this.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the best.
So
And can I just say, wait, before we start, like how unfair it is that Namjoon gets to hear all the songs before they come out.
Yeah.
Like they all say, "Oh, Namjoon already heard it."
Mhm.
Jin did it, Yoongi did it, Jimin did it, and Tae did it.
well, that's probably a sign of how much they value his input
Yeah.
and want him to be like, oh yeah, it's good. And I actually have a comment about that later.
Yeah, me too.
But the thing I also wanted to say is I didn't expect for them to show us so much behind the scenes work of their solo songs. Like in the past, they would just kind of drop like when Promise came out, it was just dropped on us. When Tae's Scenery came out, that was also dropped on us. When Jin's song Tonight or This Night, however the translation
Tonight.
works, that was also just dropped on us. So and then like sometimes they have a behind for it, but it's usually like as part of just like a normal V Live, and they kind of talk about it, but they don't really share much about the rest of that with us.
And usually we don't get to actually see it as well. We just hear them talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was, I feel like this is kind of dipping your toe in the water of what they're doing with the new album. And yeah, we'll go on to talk about exactly why.
The thing I wanted to say is when that car scene where Taeyang is playing his version of Scenery, that's not the final version, is it?
Nope.
It was.
I need the translations of that version.
Oh, me too. I loved it. It was like beautiful and a little bit haunting, like a dream.
It was very calming. It was like, I don't know, like something you would hear while you were underwater. That's the way I can describe it, I guess.
Yeah, because he had like a very echoey voice on it. The thing that I got from it is that if you think Scenery is more like warm and wistful, this version was more just like a little bit more distant, a little bit more cold, which would go along with being underwater.
And I guess he was struggling with trying to put his real feelings in it, wasn't he? He was saying, how can I put my true feelings in it? So I guess that also reflects in the first version. Not that the first version like is bad or anything. It's just very different. Like if the vibe he was going for was to show his heart, then the actual version does that in a much more understandable way.
Yeah, Jimin said the same thing. Like when he worked on Promise for so long, that the first emotions he had when he initially wrote it were so different from the ones that came out in the final version, because over time his emotions changed and it no longer was relevant to what he is now when he's
Yeah. Actually, can we talk about the fact that this change, he said, happened at City Field? So a while back, Jimin did a V Live after they did their City Field Love Yourself concert. So that was the very last stop for them in the US when they were doing that part of the Love Yourself tour. And it was like a stadium that was added to their schedule at like the last minute. And I feel like it was kind of them feeling out the waters of what the demand would be if they decided to play a stadium in the US. And tickets sold out in 20 minutes. That's how rabid armies were like, we support you. Please, stadiums, yes.
Yeah.
And so that was a very historical concert. First time a Korean artist had ever had a stadium concert in the US in history. They were very emotional during that concert. And at the end, in the like in their closing comments, they all finish and Jimin just starts crying and like a lot. And he gets very emotional. And then later in a V Live, he talked about how it was in that moment. I think it's the V Live that he did after Promise was released, I think.
Yeah.
Where he said that moment put into clarity and put into perspective so many things for him and made him realize
that the message that they were trying to tell others finally got through to himself.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the thing as well. Like, can you imagine that? Like, you are going along this journey of trying to comfort and help others, and you're going through it this whole time thinking you understand it, and then all of a sudden you realize I didn't understand this at all, and now I do.
And And yeah, and that was at that moment where he's just like, what am I doing beating myself up over this? I'm happy. I should be proud of myself. I should love myself. And so after that they had Europe, and then this is the Asia leg. So this is like maybe a month or two later where he's just like, I really want to work on this song. And in the episode he says like, I really wanted to finish the melody before we left to start the Asia leg of the tour. So he said that he stayed up several nights trying to get that done. So the melody is good. He's happy with it. And now he's like, I need help with the lyrics. Cute.
Before we go on to that, though, I just wanted to go back to the scene in the car with Tay and Hobie. So he kind of gives a little brief insight to his thoughts on this about how photos hold memories and the types of sounds that he wants to add in. And the one thing that I really found really nice in this moment was Hobie was really trying to share it with us as well.
Yes.
Like, did you notice how much he was speaking into the camera and voicing it towards us? So we were included in the conversation of like, oh, this is how it is, or how do you feel about it? And it was like being on that car journey, and we've never really been able to do that before, to be in that moment and be included as an active member of a conversation about the process. And it really touched me.
Yeah, I think also like using like photos as memories and transforming it to music to amplify that feeling and really have it come through, because he's not sharing a photo book with us, right? He's sharing his music, which is like, he has two art forms that he excels at. One is music and one is photography. And so he combined them both into this.
Well, I think he has about 50 million.
No, definitely. Definitely. But I meant like, he's really passionate about both. And he combined it into one like huge passion project and gave it as a gift to ARMY.
Yeah, there's some really nice quotes coming on, but I think that's a bit later. So the thing about Jimin and Namjoon, I loved seeing this because I loved seeing their two different roles. Like Jimin with his heart and trying to put his emotions into something, and Namjoon trying to like support him and bring the best out of him, but also the combination of the two of them just vibing off of each other. And you can see, like, me as a creator, when you're working with another creator and you're channeling ideas and bouncing them off of one another, when something is really good, you feel so happy, and it's sharing such a special moment and a feeling with another person. And you really felt that in their scenes together, and I loved that.
It's so easy when you have someone who is so well versed in a certain aspect of creation and the other is just getting into it, that someone like Namjoon would just like take over or really push forward his ideas or his experience, and you didn't really see him overtaking the project. It was still completely Jimin, completely his feelings, completely his words that were coming through and his emotions that were coming through.
I love that you bring that up, because there's like a moment where it seems like Namjoon is giving him lyric suggestions and Jimin's like not feeling it, and there's this like lull, and Namjoon realizes that he's putting too much of himself into this, and so he immediately steps back and he's just like, this has to be what you want, this has to be a reflection of you, so if you don't like it, just tell me, like, we'll do other lyrics. And Jimin like comes to life again and offers more lyrics, and then they start having more breakthroughs. I just think that's incredible. And I love what you said earlier, Billy, that it was like Jimin is a very emotional person, and he was struggling to express it in lyrics, and Namjoon's also emotional, but he's way better at expressing in lyrics because he's trying to find the meaning, the rational connection between one line and another. So like he keeps going through Jimin's words and he's like, well, does this make sense? This seems kind of random. This idea doesn't follow this, but this would make sense. And I just love how the structure, he was like, I want to say a filter, but he was a filter for Jimin's thoughts.
Yeah, well, this is the difference, isn't it? Is one way of doing it would be saying, this is what you should do, or how about this, or this would work. But Namjoon's approach was, well, what do you feel? How do you feel about this? Is this what you want to say? And it kind of is like therapy in a sense. In therapy, you don't force yourself onto another person and you don't give them ideas, but rather you tease their minds into giving it back to you. And that's the way he was doing it. It was like, I'm giving you these prompts and these thoughts so that it can come from within. It was the perfect way of giving advice and being helpful and not taking away any of the personal satisfaction you find from doing it.
That takes a lot of self-control, I think. Because
Yeah.
especially, well, okay, so like near the end of their time together, when they're starting to have breakthroughs in whatever, and all the lyrics that they're writing, Namjoon gets really excited, and he's just like they're listening, and you see him getting bouncier and more into it, and then he's just like, oh, it's missing some oomph.
Yeah, that was so funny. That was so funny.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing I loved about that was that he didn't sugarcoat what he was feeling. He was very honest about the fact that he didn't think it was working. But at the same time, he was not like upfront or mean about it. And
Or
I feel like,
discouraging.
yeah, he was very encouraging. So it would,
You
the
know
thing
what it
is,
is? He wasn't judging like, you need to work on this. He was like, we will work on it, and that's what makes it so much less of a harsh criticism.
or not even well, yeah, that as well. But I think what I thought about it was very much, this could be even better. It's great, but it could be better. Let's work on making this the best that it can possibly be. And the thing is, if you have somebody mean, then you would feel very underappreciated and you would lose confidence in your work. If you have somebody that just lies to you and tells you it's great when it's not, then you're not going to create the best product.
And you don't trust yourself or them anymore.
Exactly. So Namjoon, again, he has this perfect balance between these different ways of being, and it was very nice to see that he does that, and you can see that he really tries to be that way and make sure that if he feels like he's overstepping in a certain area, then he will move it back to being balanced. And Jimin, you could see the way Jimin responded was like, oh, you're making me feel good about myself and my music, rather than, oh, this is working out because you're with me. It was like, I feel confident in myself.
You know what it is? It's because Namjoon understands that music writing is very personal. So if he, like, when he's criticizing the ideas, the lyrics that came out of Jimin's brain, that's criticizing Jimin. And he's like, it's a very delicate line, because if you just say, no, this doesn't make sense, this is wrong, this isn't going to make a good song, then you're hurting Jimin's actual like thoughts and feelings and identity, which he,
and then
of course,
he shuts down and can't do more.
Yeah. Can I just say like how how happy I am that like they showed like two angles of this situation, like one from like you could see both Jimin and Namjoon like fully, and the other was kind of from behind them, and you can see that it's actually just two cameras standing there and not a person. And I was like, oh, okay. It made me feel so relieved, that there's not just people watching them.
I was gonna say, I've had my eye on where the cameras were the entire series. Like, I wanted to understand, how were they filming all of this, in what context were BTS communicating with each other, and I completely agree with you. I also noticed that the cameras were just set up on the table, on wherever else, and then Namjoon and Jimin were just allowed to be comfortable themselves. And that to me makes the scene even more intimate, because I feel like I'm seeing them as they actually are, versus the way they would be to, you know, keep a camera person not as bored.
Like a Run episode or something.
Or like even Jin in his hotel room last episode, where he was trying to make the cameraman laugh by like, you know, like saying like, oh, let me read a page from a book. That was productive. Like, oh, I'm lazy. I can't untangle my hairdryer. Like, there's a different dynamic.
But then you see him like reading quietly in his room the lines for the endment and practicing.
Yeah, I love that as well. And honestly, like, you really could tell in this scene that they weren't focused on cameras. Like, they were very much absorbed in their work. It felt very natural. And I just, before we move on to Tay, because we might as well finish up with the conversation between Jimin and June. So I wanted to talk about some of Namjoon's advice and some of the things he said.
Yes.
So one of the things he said was, if you think that's not what I want to say, then you have to take it out. That line was very impactful, because it wasn't like, oh, you should think about changing it. It was fact, like matter of fact. You have to take it out. It cannot go in a song. And not only is that incredible advice to somebody working on music, it also makes you appreciate BTS's art even more. Because even though we knew this, hearing him say that anything that isn't from their heart is taken out. That shows how much of their heart and soul is in their music, and that was really inspiring for me to hear, because I write music and I do the same thing, but if it's a line that sounds good, it's like, oh well, this sounds good, so it should probably go in there. But it's completely changed my perspective on how I would write.
It really gives emphasis to the sincerity that they show us and share with us, right? Like they're always about sincerity, whether it's their speeches or their music. Like we feel it comes from within. And if a line that you put it just for the heck of it, but it doesn't really convey your meaning and what you want to say, then obviously from their perspective you should take it out. It shouldn't be a part of the song
because it's not real.
If it's not real and doesn't align with you.
You know what? A lot of the times I feel like armies struggle to explain why it is that we connect with BTS so much, why it is that we love them so much as people. Like we just do, right? It's just, it feels natural, and you don't question it until somebody who's not a part of the fandom says, explain it to me, I don't get it. And you're like, I can't. I think part of that actually comes through here, because you are very right, Billy, in pointing out that if this is the philosophy that Namjoon and them all apply to all of their lyrics, that they want to make sure that they mean every single word they say, of course that's why we feel that much more connected, because it means we don't have to pull out their message from like a slew of really random songs and messages that we're like, that some of this is, you know, not as real as the rest, some of this is like recycled whatever. No, everything they do is so honest and so meticulously picked to make sure that they are being sincere and accurate about their feelings. Of course we hear that message loud and clear.
Yeah, exactly. And so the next thing that June advises is to read it out like a poem. This was genius, honestly, though, because, and he goes on like and reads it in a dramatic monologue.
As if they're in class,
yeah. But that's a genius idea, because honestly, when you get stuck into a song and it's in that format, and that's what it is, it's a song, you're singing it, it has a melody, then it's very much one thing. If you then read it as a poem, it's a completely different thing, because even though music and poetry has similarities, they have different like purposes, they have different meanings. Poetry is very much to create beautiful words or to put out your feelings, or you know, this kind of thing. And so reading it out loud allows you to hear it in a different way, from a different perspective than having it sung. And when they did that, if you notice, like they immediately came up with the line that they were missing, because it added that new perspective that would enable them to find that. And I just thought that was brilliant. Yeah.
Those are very interesting ways of approaching songwriting that I would never understand or think of myself, because that's not something I do, but something I desperately want to know and understand about them.
Yeah, especially with the way they work, that they always start with the melody first and then go to the lyrics. So to take the lyrics out of the melody and recite it like a poem really gives it a whole new feel.
Yeah, and like when you're listening to music with lyrics, you are listening to the words, but you're also listening to the melody first and foremost. Like it goes into a different part of your brain. If you're listening to it by just the words, then you view it from a different angle in your brain. So by having both of these work and both of these sound good, you have the complete package.
We have to like acknowledge the fact that they are doing this right after concerts or in between concerts. It's not like they have like so much free time that they're just sitting and writing. No, like Namjoon and June are sitting right after a concert. They went to the hotel room and they are working on songs. It's not think about it, the concerts are like finished at midnight by the time they get to the hotel.
Yeah,
and they're sitting there
and they're exhausted.
Yes, like they say, I'm burning 3,000 calories in a concert. Like they're exhausted, and yet they care so much about the songs that they're like putting it out as a gift. It's not even. They're out on SoundCloud for free. It's not for an album or something
I think seeing this though, it seemed like they were also doing it for themselves, because the amount of joy they seemed to get out of writing these was really evident. And the last piece of advice that Namjoon gives also links to Tae. So he says they have to make sense to me. And that's basically like, no matter the style of lyrics, whether it's big grandiose ideas, whether it's just personal and very matter of fact, as it has to make sense to me. And so Jimin's lyrics were very kind of expressing his heart, but in a more, I don't really know how to explain it. Tae's lyrics are more ambiguous. than Jimin's were.
Jimin's lyrics are reassuring someone. They are the way he usually acts to other members, to his friends, to his family, to people he cares about. So he turned that and did it to himself. He talked that way to himself.
Yes, exactly. And the concept of that is something that most people can really relate to and is a very comforting song to the listeners as well. And then with Tae's song, it was much more like, how do you put the concept of how taking a photo makes you feel into a song? That's not as much of a, I don't really know how to phrase it, but they're very different, but they have to make sense to me, is what Namjoon said.
Yeah.
And I feel like both the members were working on making it make sense to themselves.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm very glad you bring that up, because the thing about Tae is that it's hard for us to figure out how to explain it, because Tae is a very unique person, and the way he views the world is very unique. And what he says to the camera as he's in his hotel room trying to figure out the lyrics is, he says that when he takes, you'll see, the quote is, "When I take photos, the people I see through the lens, the scenery, the streets, and the sky, I want to write about what those things mean to me. They're not just photos, but a real source of strength for me. The things I felt then are still within me. I could feel them even now." Like, that is so interesting to me, because that explains his other comment that he made in Burn the Stage, I think, where he said that whenever he sees a fan in the audience, he can't ever forget that face. It's in his memory. And I thought that was really incredible, because that's not how my brain works. And See, I think he has like a kind of a photographic memory.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. He has a great memory. We see it all the time with his choreo, remembering all the choreos. But yeah, it just is a very unique way of viewing the world and of viewing his love. Like, I feel like this song is a complete encapsulation of the very unique way that Taehyung loves. I think he loves in a way that is larger than life. It's hard to explain. I'm finding trouble explaining it now, but listening to his music.
You're just like Tae.
Yeah, I am. And that's why I relate to it so much, and why I love what he was saying so much, because it makes so much sense to me that these pictures and these moments were something inexplainable, and that he was having such a hard time putting it into his songs. He says, let me find the exact quote. I can't find it right now, but he says something like, "I have a much harder time expressing myself."
Oh, I have the quote. The quote is, "I'm not good at expressing myself eloquently. I won't be able to write poetic lyrics like Namjoon, but I'd like to write lyrics that convey my true feelings. It's not easy. How do I get my true feelings across?"
Exactly. This is where him adding the shutter sounds and these little quirky things and lyrics, like I'm pretty sure there's lyrics about footprints or framing things in black and white. These are very abstract concepts. If you said that to somebody in real life, they'd have to really think about it. And this links back to Namjoon's point of, it has to make sense to me. And I feel when I listen to that song that I completely understand what Taehyung is trying to get across, even though it's not explained to me with
You know what it is?
words.
You know what it is? I think this relates back to what we said before. For him, he sees all of those moments as ephemeral. They're fleeting. It was a unique moment in time that can never be recreated. And so all he has is the photo to send his mind back to that one moment. And that's why it's so precious.
And at the same time, each of these photos are still existing within him. And do you remember my theory on time of how all moments are constantly existing within us at a given moment, because, you know, we're living them all? So this expression and this way of viewing things is just so great, and it comes across in the music without the need for words. And that's what makes Taehyung's way of loving so unique and so different and so beautiful to me. And yeah, I guess I've kind of explained what I was trying to explain at the start of this when I couldn't.
Yeah.
I find it so beautiful that they're all inspired by each other.
Yes.
Like, you can see it with everything, like with Jimin and Tae and Jin starting to write more songs and sharing it with one another, and they just inspire each other so much. Just by being next to each other and seeing the others working on something. It's just so beautiful.
Speaking of inspirational, what I really like about how they did this cinematography what did I say? I just combined the word scene and
cinematography. Yeah.
Anyway,
cinematography.
Yeah, when Taeyong has that quote where he says, "How do I get my true feelings across?" Immediately after that is the scene with Namjoon still with Jimin, and it's as if he's answering Taeyong's question, because he says, and I quote, "Some lyrics are filled with grandiose ideas and eloquent expressions, but then there are lyrics that aren't engaging because they're too explicit or simple. It's not about whether you can hear it or not. My intentions and feelings in writing the song have to make sense to me. Am I saying what I want to say? I think that's important."
Yeah.
And you know, the thing that was really interesting to watch with Tae was so you could hear his instrumental just playing on repeat in the background.
So I have a question. Is that hit? Because that seemed different than Scenery.
It's slightly different, yeah. I think that the instrumental was very, very similar. His melody was definitely different, and the lyrics were different. The instrumental was similar, but slightly less. I think they added more in the final mixing of the version. But yeah, I think it was slightly different. But in this moment, you saw him just listening to it on repeat, like over and over and over again, and writing out lyrics and thinking of melodies and kind of just going over and over and over again. And that's the reality of writing music. It doesn't just come to you. Like, most of the time you sit there for 7 hours listening to the same song, trying to come up with one melody or one lyric that works. And that's what, again, we spoke about this earlier on in the episode, seeing the beauty in the process of how they created this. It just made each of these songs mean so much more. Not that they didn't mean everything already, but if you could add an extra layer to, which is what BTS is, you know, they add that extra layer that we can't really explain.
I think what you said now is so perfect, because it's true. Like, it's not just, it hits you in a moment, the lyrics or the melody and stuff, and you see when Jimin and Namjoon are working on it, like they said, okay, it's perfect, it's done, bang, 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 and 3 shots and all
bang
that.
Banya.
Oh, I just wanted to bring that up. That was adorable.
So cute.
Because I love that instead of saying bang, they say bangya.
Banya.
And how they turned the one gun, one shot, bangya. They turned that into like motivation for Jimin. Like, oh, you did a good job. Here's one shot. Oh, we did a better job. 3 shots. Bangya. Like, it's so
then
cute.
It just comes to life.
So cute.
And it's
you know,
exactly what friends do together. Like,
yes.
I loved being given that privilege to see that between them, because it's so cute and endearing and makes me want to be their friend.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, but right after they like, he says it's excellent, and they said, okay, it's done. He says, it's done, there's nothing more to add, that's it. And then you see them still working on it.
But the thing that this is what I was talking about earlier, so I just want to make sure there's not anything else with Tae, just that how cute he was when he was celebrating that he'd got something that he was happy with, and he was like smiling and like dancing about it. That was so cute as well. But with Jimin and Namjoon, so this is what I was talking about earlier in the episode, they then have come up with their finalized lyrics, they're happy with them, they're happy with the melodies, and they're just singing it to each other and kind of like saying, hey, look, we've done it, we're singing this. And then it segued from them singing it in their little hotel room after finishing it into the actual version of the song in the background, and it was so well done, and it just touched me.
It was the culmination of all their hard work and effort, and
it punched me in the chest.
It made that song more personal to us. I think for armies who watched that, we were like, they brought us on the journey with them of trying to figure it out, and we were like, we appreciate the end product all the more. I said this time and time again, if we walk the hard path with them to making music, we will celebrate and appreciate it all the more at the end.
Because you know what it is? It's like we've experienced the ups and the downs, and so the final end product is like a culmination of all of that. And it's catharsis. Like we've felt that as well.
The last thing I just wanted to say is that I love how all of that, like at the end of that scene, is Hobie, and he has like a little interview, and he's talking about how he thinks that he can relate to them because he also moved to Seoul to study and to write music, and he feels like he can understand their emotions and ambitions because of that. And then the part that I really think is important is he goes, the sort of music that they want to make and their musical identity is all reflected in their work. They are writing from the soul.
True.
And isn't Promise so Jimin, and isn't Scenery so Tae?
Yeah, they wrote from the soul, and they wrote about who they truly were, not for some market or someone to appreciate them. They just wanted to express a piece of themselves in the hopes that somebody else would be touched by it.
Yeah. I also wanted to add really shortly that out of all the people to do that interview, and it's Hobie that says, I moved to Seoul to write lyrics. And it's so prominent. Like Hobie went to Seoul and had to mix with all those rappers with and Namjoon and Yoongi that were already songwriters and already knew how to rap and all that, and he had to fit in and create his own style at that time. And of course he relates to them doing this same journey now.
And doesn't Hobie have his own musical identity as well?
Yes,
that is
he
so
does.
crystal clear.
It's so unique too.
Yes.
So
and
unique.
it's so Hobie. Like each of their music really is like a piece of their soul. It's beautiful.
The next thing that the next concert location that we see is Singapore. And Singapore is actually a place where they only did one concert. They did it in January 19th of 2019. So if they were starting off the new year with that. And just to like give some context, the previous concert that they had done before that was Nagoya, Japan. And honestly, okay, so they open up this this segment of them like in rehearsal and preparing, and they mentioned that they're like a little bit anxious because they haven't performed in a while. And and the way I interpreted this is, and please let me know guys if you interpret it differently, is that when they were doing the Japan version of the Love Yourself tour, they had changed it up. I know they were singing Japanese songs and they were doing other things that weren't part of the tour for everywhere else. So I think this was, I guess, the first time in a while that they were going back to the normal Love Yourself tour, and they were like, oh, are we sure we remember how to do this, instead of accidentally doing the Japanese version?
Yeah, I thought so too. I also want to note that the Singapore stadium, it was the Singapore National Stadium. They're the first K-pop act to...
Korean act.
Thank you, Korean act. I'm not sure if they're first Korean act. I think they're the first Korean act.
Korean group. I don't know.
Korean group. First Korean group to perform at the...
Actually, who cares if they're idols? They're the first idol group. They don't give a shit.
Yeah, idol artists.
Sorry, I keep not letting you finish your sentence.
It's fine. That's how we are here. Our thoughts are too crazy. We can't contain them.
Yeah.
So they're the first Korean group to perform at the Singapore National Stadium, which is insane. Only like national events happen there. Like it was such a big moment. And the staging area was actually the arena next door where most artists perform. Like they put ARMY to wait in the arena next door, which is the place where most people perform.
So you're telling me that BTS uses most artists' dream venue as their storage?
ARMY storage.
ARMY storage. Like ARMY were waiting there. This was the staging area where ARMY were waiting in lines and everything was setting up.
Was this because it was really hot there and they were trying to create like an indoor spot for them?
I don't know if that's the reason behind it, but I guess it makes sense because it was super humid. They were complaining on the entire time, and the fact that in a stadium tour, unlike in arena tour, you're very dependent on the weather.
Yeah.
Like rain affects you, humidity affects you, where in arena it's closed circuit air conditioning. You don't have those elements to consider when you're performing.
But you know, the best part of this for me was the reaction to it was literally, we're not that well experienced with this right now. Hey, this can really help us in the future. Let's go through the pain so that we can then learn from it and not have to worry about it again.
Let's make this a learning experience.
Yeah, what a mindset to have.
What a professional.
Yeah, Hobie's such a professional.
Yeah. Except Jin then. Jin is like wearing the
the jumper.
Fuzzy white sweater that Hobie got him. And he's like, oh, look what J-Hope got me. Look what I'm wearing. Yeah. I'm really hot. This was a mistake to wear. Which, to be fair, I understand though. Like they came from Korea in January, so it's like it was probably winter was in the full swing of things there, and then they get off the plane and they're like, oh my god, it's so hot here. What have we done?
Sometimes you just don't know what to wear.
Yeah. The thing that I want to take a second to mention the cinematography again, because I have a love affair with their cinematographer. And that's like, so you have this intro where they're rehearsing, they're hot, they're worried, they're like, we're not experienced in this, they're a little anxious about performing this again. And then the concert begins. And I really like what they did with the sound here, because they play the concert music, but they play it in a muted way. So you can't really get fully absorbed into it the way you would like to. So in a way, you feel like the concert is happening at a distance. And to be honest, that is a common way that people experience, you know, like life when they're feeling anxious.
So do you know how I felt about this? And I actually wrote down comments about this editing as well. It's very choppy and it's very fast paced and you don't have room to breathe. It feels completely chaotic, intense, and there's no room for a break. There's no room. You're just moving from one place to another, seeing them running around, seeing them with all the flannels, seeing them performing. And it was done in a way that I felt like I was doing it. I felt very on edge. And like, it was the first time I've seen them show a concert like that, because you either get long shots of the performance or you get like an in-depth backstage of them, but combining the two and being like, okay, on stage, dance, see all these people, get off, run to this thing, have your sweat wiped, back to the stage. It was very reflective of what I feel like the environment and the atmosphere would be like.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant that you both mentioned that, because as someone who deals every summer with 90-80% humidity and extreme heat, I can tell you that having, like, when there's a lot of water content in the air, it makes you feel anxious. It makes you feel nervous. It feels like you don't get enough air in your lungs because there's so much humidity in the air. And that cinematography really helps the viewer get that sensation, and it really sets the stage very well to what comes after, to the result of that humidity, the result of that.
You're right, actually, because one thing I picked up on was the amount of close-up shots we had of their feet going into ice buckets, flannels on their faces, them having an ice pack on their chest. They showed a lot to represent the heat. And I bet if we rewatched it, it would be done with quite a high, like quite a warmth to it. So I guess that probably is what they were trying to show. Just quickly, I wanted to go back because we did miss one thing. So when we were talking about them not performing much, we had Jin talking about how he had practiced by himself in his room, all the lyrics and the steps to make sure that he was like still on point. And you know, this is such a parallel to that scene in American Hustle Life when he's practicing on his own, the dance routines. And thinking about those two scenes side by side, one of them was very, very early on in their career, and one of them is more up to date with the present. And the fact that Jin is still exactly the same way and takes his time to be by himself and go over everything so that he doesn't have to like be worried about messing up. I just really adored seeing that, and it gave me my normal appreciation for how insanely wonderful Jin is.
You know, I agree. But you know what else is interesting? That example you just gave really puts into perspective that at the end of the day, the only constant in all of this is them. So their habits of how they practice, how they prepare is...
how they push themselves.
Yeah, but that's going to be uniquely them. And no matter what things change around them, no matter how big or massive or bigger than life they get, no matter how many spotlights are on them or how loud the music is, the fact is they are still 7 men who all they can do is practice and prepare to the best of their ability.
Yeah, completely.
The other thing that I also just wanted to say is there's this like short little aside where like they perform Fake Love, and then after that you see Yoongi running off the stage like screaming because the next song is Seesaw, which is his song. So he's just like running down the stairs and he's like, ah, and he's running.
That was one of my favorite moments from the whole episode. Oh my god, that entire thing was the most adorable thing I've ever
adorable
seen.
Run and the fleeting and like taking his shirt and like he was it, and then he was like lying on that couch, sugar, and starts.
Oh, it was everything.
I love seeing him flustered like that because he's so calm all the time and he's like in control. He has a stage persona, and then the minute they're off, he's like, ah, I'm late. I have to go change.
No, it was so cute. Yeah.
And then
I'm just greedy as an army. Like
Uh-huh.
I know that we're in the crowd and we get to experience their like performances and everything like that. I want this is not allowed and it's very selfish of me, and I don't really want it, but I do want it, of just like a camera following them around at all moments in time, and I can see the backstage of them getting from one place to another and then coming back out and being on the stage and then going behind to, you know, do this thing. Oh,
Yeah.
and so I love getting this slightly in the
I
series.
I think yeah, I understand also the sentiment that you're trying to get across, and that we love the amount of work that goes into all of this. Like, it's fascinating to think of how many moving parts there are and how much they have to get right. There's so many variables. There's so many things that can go wrong and that have to be changed between sets, between songs, and they work so hard to get it all correct. That's why they have such a massive team of people who travel with them to get it all done. And it's incredible to see it in action because it's such a beautiful, like, it's a work of art on its own, their stage production.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing that like really makes me feel that way the most of all, and this links back to what we've said a few times in this episode now, is that that little scene is the humanity behind the show. And we get to see the performance and then we get to see the messy little humanity of him running to the next one, and then we see the next performance. So those little moments in between are the messy bits, the mistakes, and they say like, oh, it's messy. I don't know how much you would want to see. The messy is what makes it so great, so special, and I love the messy.
Yeah, me too.
I wanted to, if you guys are ready to move on, I wanted to talk about what Yoongi says in his interview, because I love this. So I will preface this by saying that ARMYs already know that to be part of BTS, like, they come as a group. So Yoongi's interview opens with him saying that like, you know, maybe it's because they've been together for so long, but one drawback of being a team is that if one of them is having a hard time, it's hard for everyone else to see it. And so if one of them is struggling, it starts to weigh everyone else down. And even if they could help that one person back up, if it's a really big thing that's weighing down on one of them, they will all end up falling into a slump, and it'll make things harder for all of them.
Yeah.
And that's the difficulties of these things, isn't it? Because when you're by yourself, then there's only one variable that is to account. It's yourself. And therefore it's a lot harder to deal with things because you don't have other people to support you, but it's just one variable. Now with the 7 of them, it's 7 variables. There are 7 times more possibilities of something going wrong. So even if they can support each other, and that's a benefit, the drawback is, like you say, that if one falls, they all fall, and it's more likely for that to be a possibility.
And we saw actually a little bit of that in Bon Voyage 3 when they were in Malta, right? Like, they first had to go and Taeyang wasn't with them, so the entire time all they could talk about was that, like, oh, this feels weird, there's someone missing, like, who's missing, oh, there's only 6 of us, and like over and over again you could feel them kind of being off. And then when Taeyang finally came, all of a sudden Yoongi had to leave, and then they continued feeling weirdly about it. They're like, oh, why isn't Yoongi here? Yoongi needs to be here.
And like that's with them missing. And then the other side of it is like when one of them is struggling or is down, and an example I would think of for that is JK's injury again. Like when he was injured, the entire team like started to fall apart, and they had to build it back up and pick it back up and try to create something with the broken pieces. But the whole time they were like missing his presence because he was part of the whole.
And he was such a big part of the whole. Like, he's the lead dancer,
the main well, the main singer.
The interesting thing is that Yoongi, though, says even though this is a weakness, there is also a massive strength that they get from being together. And he goes on in his interview to say that just being there for each other is a source of strength, and that they know each other so well by now that they don't need words, and that it's just, it's so perfect. And that's where he says that he thinks that they were destined to meet.
So he says, even if I put together a team myself, it wouldn't have worked this well. Could there have been a better match? We must have been destined to meet. I think that a lot. and my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Destiny and BTS are just two words that belong together. Like it was fate, destiny, whatever. It's just they were meant to be together because I don't see how Bang Pinyin found seven
yeah.
people like that and managed to bring them together.
They're so different too.
Yeah.
They're
So different.
It's not like you have 7 people who are really similar and all really like the same style of hip hop and the same dance. No,
Yeah.
we see the more they get a chance to express themselves and write their own music, the more they diverge into different genres, into focusing on lyrics or focusing on sounds or focusing on like a different funk feel. I'm thinking of Hobie now. Like it's just all over the place. And it works because they take that little bit of themselves and they bring it to the group. And their group concept, their group sound is different even from all of their individual stuff, but it still echoes pieces of them.
Plus, they can do it all. They have 7 things to work with rather than one. And, I think the reason that this worked so well is partly what they were saying in the last episode. Like they were talking about what makes companionship, and it's that they formed a brotherhood when they didn't know anything else. That's what they said last episode. And I often think about this as well, that you can't really explain how this works so well. There are certain things, but when it comes down to it, it's just something that we can be grateful for and count as a blessing. And I'm sure they feel that way as well.
I also think, like we always say, like the genre is BTS. And the reason why that really resonates is not because we want to say, I don't know, something that might seem condescending or anything, but it's because they're all so inclusive. They don't say, oh no, this doesn't fit here. They find a way to really bring together all these different styles, all these different point of views that they each have, that they each singularly gravitate to. And bringing it to one cohesive work of art.
Yeah, Namjoon doesn't act as a gatekeeper where he's like, no, this doesn't work. And I'm really glad that you actually brought that up because Yoongi's quote from his interview is this where you were going?
No, I want.
He was just saying, and I'll quote him: "When you travel, there are some people you travel with from the start, and some you meet along the way. I think the reasons would all be different. Whether it was done voluntarily or not, we started our journey together. As we continue, I can't think of anything better than this. Rather than doing something on my own, the 7 of us doing it together has a more synergistic effect."
Yeah.
And I think it's in knowing that is how they managed to not be down about it and to not want to go in their separate directions. And this comes back to last episode again, because they kind of spoke about this type of thing.
I have a question for you guys. Do you think that part of the change in their re-signed contract was that they would get more time and support to do their own stuff, like their own mixtapes and songs?
I think they had that support and they chose, like they always said that, not always, but they said in the Map of the Soul interview, which is like in April after they signed the new contract, they said that as far as the solo work, you do your own work, you choose, like you can use the people in Big Hit, but you pay them, like you choose who you work with, what you do, what you personally do, and what you ask other people to do for you. And then you can ask Big Hit to help you with advertising it and putting it out there. But technically you do the work. And since the interview was in April and after they signed their new contract, then I don't think it was.
So I think that for me personally, I don't think so much that it would be that they need more support or things like that. But I've mentioned before that I feel like in their contract, it was to make it more sustainable and to give them more, like less strict of schedules, less demanding work. And in so doing, giving them more time to work on solo things, because yes, they get to work on solo things and they have before, but they have to put in extra hours on top of the insanely intense schedule that they already have. So for a lot of people, they'd be like, well, you know, I don't want to work on solo stuff because I'm fucking exhausted. I don't get any sleep. I don't get any time for myself.
Well, also creativity doesn't come at the snap of a finger. Like you need time to just like be in a homeostasis of nothing for you to suddenly like spike with an idea.
Yeah.
Which is also why I always feel bad when Namjoon's like, oh, I've been lazy. I've been doing nothing. Like, I am
hate
being creative. I'm like, no, honey, you need to do that. You need to
know what
recover.
lazy is.
Yeah,
They
but
were so taken aback by having free time during this whole pandemic. They were like, oh my God, this is way too much having any sort of free time. I need to be working on something else.
Yeah. But I wanted to go back to the quote that you said by Jungi, from Jungi. And he mentions how it's so important to have people to walk with you. And I keep thinking about so many artists do these tours. They're not as privileged. Most artists aren't as privileged as BTS to have such a strong fandom that supports them, which is why bundling is such a thing.
yeah.
Because no one buys albums anymore. So while BTS gets money from sales, most artists don't. It might seem like they have high album sales, but because it comes from bundling, they don't actually get much money out of it, if at all.
Yeah, you bring up a good point.
So most of the money artists make is from tour sales. And that's why they're really pushing themselves to do tours. I have like Ariana Grande between March 18, 2019 and December 22, 2019, which if we compare to BTS did what? 25 shows at that time, and they were all stadium. Ariana Grande did 93 shows.
Oh my God.
97. I'm sorry, 97 shows, and it's arenas, so it's smaller. But 97 shows, that's insane. That's an insane schedule. And it's no wonder that you see so many of them like lose that tension halfway through and get exhausted and have to take breaks and have to cancel tours and to go through such an intense schedule alone with no friends to support you, to lift you back up, to make sure you maintain that tension throughout it, and have all those tiny jokey moments to ease that tension. And she's not like special. It's something very, very common. You see it all the time in all these Western artists. So I think they know that, and that they're very grateful to have one another to pick themselves up.
Well, we get to see one of these conversations in a later episode, so I can't wait till we get to talk about that, because we get to see the other side of it, of them sitting and talking about how, even though, so here they say that being a part of a team can be a weakness because of this, and then later on we get that conversation that's like, but being part of a team can be a great source of strength.
So this is going back to the thing we discussed at the beginning of this episode about Jungkook, because the concert ends, they survive the heat, and what Hobie takes away from that is he's just like, I'm going to use it as a learning experience for future stadium concerts, which means, by the way, that at that point they knew Speak Yourself was coming.
Yeah.
And they were like, all right, I have a better idea of how to prepare, what I need to do, what do I need to make sure I'm aware of for these concerts so I can power all the way through, like spoken like a true professional. And then we have like a Jungkook's interview where he is talking about what we said before, that he wants to improve harder and faster, and he wants to show a rapid growth, and he's frustrated that things are still difficult for him. And that's when Hobie comes to him with that professional hat still on his head, and he's like, here's suggestions for improvement for you so that you can sustain yourself during a stadium concert. And that's actually, by the way, now what I see it as, is him saying, hey, we have many more of these in front of us, and they're going to be even more strenuous and more difficult. Here in Singapore, we only had 1 day of this. When we do Speak Yourself, we're going to have 2 days every weekend that we'll have to do this. You need to figure out how to temper yourself more and have a better pace, so we can rely on you to be okay and to be able to manage yourself without our help the rest of the concert.
Yeah, and I think it's so relatable to see Jungkook struggle with this, because they are first, I think even before they are artists, they are athletes. They push themselves to the limits constantly. And I used to be a really big football fan. And when footballers have, like, they usually play 2 games a week. Each game is like 90 minutes. And they really push themselves. And the thing is that they, if there's a big game that's big for the country, like an international tournament, or for their team that's really big, they take shots to injured areas to numb that pain. They play through so many injuries just to make sure that this event will get the maximum, to really max it out, to have no regrets while performing on that stage. And I think that's exactly what Jungkook is feeling. It's like, no, this crowd is only gonna see me now. I have to give it my all. I have to make an impression and do my best. And he's really trying to milk that moment till the last drop, to not let anything slide by, or even lower his a little bit his tension. And I think it's so relatable and so understandable. But yeah, they have so many tours, so many other performances ahead of them, that they have to pace it out and find that balance between doing a lot but not too much.
Yeah, and this is why I found this entire scene to be so beautiful, because the way that Jungkook is acting comes completely from a place of love.
Yes.
And then the way that the others are acting also comes from a complete place of love. And even though they're on opposing ends of the argument and have different opinions, they're both coming from a place of love. And the way that they choose to go about doing this as well was just so nice. And you could see that they knew exactly how to frame it to him, and then how to make him feel better about it, with like praise or jokes, or making it about other members. Like so they were talking about JK, but then it's like, oh, but this is how this person is, or I'm like this. And
Yoongi calls himself a camel.
A camel, yeah. Which, okay.
Wait, I just want to quote Yoongi really quick. He says, "A horse runs fast and gets exhausted quickly, but a camel moves consistently at a consistent pace and collapses consistently too." I was like,
I just find Yoongi's like usually Jin joins him and they both like BS people. Like even like when they did the propolis, like they took in the vitamin. And they made something up about it. It's just putting stuff out there and making it seem like it's true.
But it's also so wise. And it's very true. Like it is the case, and they have like these different approaches to it. And I just loved June, because this is basically what they did. So Hobie kind of gave him a critique, even though it was a kind critique. He gave him a critique, and then June.
By the way, I know what you're trying to say. I also want to add to that. What they don't show in here, and what they do show in Memories of 2018, is that this behind the scenes clip, like there's more that happens. So Jin comes into the conversation, and he says that, hey, you need to make it seem like you're going really hard without actually doing it. So you have to have exaggerated facial expressions and body expressions. But then in order, I don't know, to soften the blow of what he was advising, he started doing it in a really like goofy way. And Jimin's like, don't pay attention to him. Take the example of Hobie. Watch Hobie pretend to exaggerate his movements.
This Hyung does it well. This one doesn't.
Yeah. So and then now you can keep going and say then you get Namjoon.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say was that, like, in this sequence, we have Hobie giving a critique, and JK really taking it to heart, and you can see it on his little face, even though it was done in a kind way. And then what we had from June, well, we had Hobie saying as well, like, oh, you did well, you did a good job. And then we have June, and he basically insults Hobie to make Jungkook laugh, and obviously he did that because he knew that Hobie wouldn't take it to be that. Like, basically he's like, oh, when has he ever done a bad job? Why are you being mean to him? Why are you breaking the kid's spirit? Like, because he was trying to take the criticism away from JK a little bit and put it towards Hobie, but in a joking way, so that then JK could laugh about it and like join in on teasing another member. And that is the perfect way to like give criticism, in my opinion, and a very loving way to give criticism. And
that's actually a technique. It's called a compliment sandwich. And it's where you have a criticism or feedback or something that needs to be changed, and in order for people to want to be motivated to change, they have to feel like they were acknowledged and whatever they did was recognized. So you have to sandwich your criticism between compliments, some praise, so that the person gets praise, they warm up, they hear the criticism, and then they hear the praise, either the same praise or a different thing repeated, and then they feel like they were acknowledged for who they are, and now they can take your criticism and work it in.
But it's not just that, like, there's that, but the other thing is the way that he kind of takes the firing squad away from one person to another person, but in a good way. And so I'm trying to remember now off the top of my head it is. All I can remember is they're in an elevator. And one of the members is like getting a slight criticism, and then they instead just start insulting a different member, and then they all joke about it and laugh
I
about
think
it.
it's in I can't remember. Maybe
Yeah, right.
Burn the Soul or something. I can't.
Maybe I can't remember where it's from, but I'm glad that you remember it because I wasn't sure if I was just making it up. But basically what they do is like give a slight criticism and then just start insulting a different member so that that person doesn't feel so bad, but they know that they're doing it jokingly and with love. And yeah. So moving on to the end, like we have that.
And I love this contrast because it like the end is, so I just wanted to say, so we talked about before how like the last thing we get from Jungkook is him saying, I'm still ashamed of myself. I can't propel myself forward with confidence. What I've always shown on stage is all that I've got. Getting better, faster is my goal. And then immediately in contrast is Namjoon's interview. And what he says, to, I think, is brilliant and realistic and such a reflection on his philosophy of what they're doing and what they end up making Boy with Love about, especially his rap. He says, focusing on the present and doing my best to live for tomorrow and the next day are the only things that I can do now. The future is the future because it hasn't arrived. Time that's not yet come. What's important to me is the present. So instead of holding on to a future that's uncertain, standing in front of 50,000 people and putting on a good performance is the best that we can do.
It is interesting because there is also JK's perspective of that is kind of what he's doing, isn't it? That he's only living in the present and he's giving everything that he possibly has to the present without thinking about the future. Yeah. So there's also that side of it, like
the dark side of it.
The dark side of it. There's a positive and there's a negative to everything. And you see these in contrast here. You see how it's a good thing, how it's a bad thing. And then you also see how it's a bad thing and a good thing. So you've got JK giving too much in the moment, but then you've got JK worrying too much about the future. And then it's also the opposite. So it can also be good to focus on the future and good to focus on the moment. And it's just,
I guess the answer
just learning to find a balance.
Yeah, everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation, exactly. And, you know, this whole bit with JK, I think this is something that progresses throughout the series of his mindset. But the one thing that I always remember is that the people around him are constantly talking about this idea of like not worrying too much about the future, taking it slow. And you know, he's absorbing that. And he's his own worst critic. And I don't know. I just think that I hope that he starts giving himself 10 million times more credit.
Yeah, I also think it's difficult because we've seen, I want to say it was in Bring the Soul, where they talked about how, of all of them, Jungkook didn't have, like, a life growing up before he joined Big Hit. So he became an adult through his experience as an idol, through his experience with the group. So for him, it's completely natural that he's like, this is my reality. This is my only reality. I want to improve and do everything I can to make it better. And I think in contrast, Namjoon, you know, he talks about it even on Festa, where he's like, what would my life have been if I had gone the other route and gone to college and tried to focus on that instead? So he always sees what they do now as a not borrowed, but it's like, he says, like, we're here for the ride. Like, it's temporary. It's something that I'm doing right now. And I think he knows that, like, worst case scenario, like, he does have other realities that he could be instead.
Exactly. And with JK, this is all he's ever known.
All right, guys. Shall we wrap up this episode?
Yes.
If you had to summarize this episode in one word, what would you say?
Artists.
Idol.
Oh, we didn't talk about this. Can call me artist.
Can call me idol? Oh, that was so funny.
That was so... I actually went and looked for the clip and I found it. And it's so funny. It's not as bad as they made it out to be. It's really not as bad. The only word that is like slightly out of time is the second can, and then he pulls the rest of it off. But the way that they were just clowning him was hilarious. Anyway.
Yeah, well, you could also imagine for them, there's the variety they wanted. They were like, it was so funny. We practice. And in the moment, he just like gets lost in the music and was like, oh yeah, can call me idol.
Oh my God, this is exactly what I wrote down. So I put the idol mistake. That is one such change. That's one such differentiation from one concert to another, is their little mistakes. They're like quirky things. But anyway, okay, back to if I could summarize this in one word.
You broke Billy.
I
shouldn't
have
have-
many words in my brain, so I'm just gonna go with
Destiny.
Well, now she's not. Team.
Team? There are too many words. You can't ask this of me. Okay, wait. Let me think about how we started and how we finish. So we start with them talking about how they work in a group and how they have to be more selfless and more reflective of the team. And then we kind of end with that as well. So
I like team.
Team, we'll go with team. Sorry, that was just a complete waste of time of me just having a mental crisis over trying to decide a word.
I should not have brought up words where you're concerned. That was
yeah.
a bad
Like,
choice on
are
my
you
part.
serious? Yeah.
Yummy, what's yours?
Mine is idol, I think.
Idol.
Just because I really like that they named this episode You Can Call Me Idol. We know that song... Oh, by the way, I also love that they played Idol during this episode because the whole meaning of that song is, I don't care what you call me.
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, no matter what you do, you can't stop me loving myself. You can't stop me from enjoying who I am and what I do and the people I touch and the career I have. It doesn't matter how much criticism you direct at me. I have succeeded in the way I wanted to, and there's millions of people around the world who appreciate me for me. And even if it was just one person who was touched by what we do, it would be freaking worth it. I love that they had an episode like this as proof of, here's the kind of artists we are. Here's how much work we put in, how much thought we put in, how we agonize over every performance, every lyric. And the fact that they put so much care into all of this, it shows. We feel it, and you can't deny that all that hard work paid off into a brilliant final product. So they are idols, and that should be a positive word.
Agree.
Yeah, that's
and you know what?
exactly
I see the word idol for them as we use it. Idol. You are an idol. You are idolized by so many around the world. And you know what I was going to say is I've decided on my word, and it would be process. And the reason I thought about this is I was looking at my notes again, and it has that it ends with a real airplane taking off. And now when we look back at the beginning, we open with a toy airplane. We go through this whole journey and process of creation and growth and journey. And then we end with a real airplane taking off into the sky. And it's like that process from toy airplane to real airplane.
From idea to reality.
Yeah.
Kind of, but more from
Childhood
from
dream
concept or from concept, from dream
to actualization.
reality. Yeah, we'll go with that.
I also wrote down regarding Idol that Idol has so many variations now. Like, I don't know, for you, I only had one thought about Idol, but before getting into the K-pop world. But now we know that idols are what K-pop performers are called. There's idol that is someone that is idolized, and there's also idol as a role model, and which is something completely different than idolizing someone, because you look up to him, but you don't put them on a pedestal. It's something you want to achieve, but you don't. It doesn't have that negative connotation that usually idolizing someone does.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I did use it in the more positive version of it.
Yeah. And I keep it reminded me thinking when I thought about the title of the episode, about that discussion with between Be Free and Yoongi and Namjoon, when
Be imprisoned now.
Yeah. Be not so free.
Be gone.
Oh.
And where he talks to them and he says, you're an idol. What's an idol? And Namjoon says, role model. And Big Free said, yeah, but that's not what it really is. That's not what we're talking about here. And I think when we're talking about BTS, for us, I think in every aspect and how they handle life, how they handle their issues, their problem, their growth, the way they think and present it in words, whether it's speeches or endments or anything, they're amazing role models.
And when you say that, actually, it really makes me think of why this term idol was picked. And you know, when idols became a thing, it was supposed to be that. It was supposed to be an idol as a role model. It was supposed to be somebody that fought for others and inspired people. That's what the meaning of idol truly was supposed to be. And it was twisted and corrupted along the way. But BTS are recreating the term idol into something. They're reclaiming it, and they're making it back into its originally intended form. So you know what? They are idols. They're idols in the way idols were supposed to be.
Yes.
And we're proud to be fans of such incredible idols.